Hello, this is Kyle Allender of Christian Idealism. So recently I made a Facebook post about how I said that if morality exists, so if moral realism is true, then I don't think that it can be grounded in God. Some people got really frustrated at my claim there, and so I'm going to kind of explain why I think this is the case, and then I'll explain where I think what I think morality is and where I think it comes from in some sense. So the issue is that morality is understood as something that is objective, right? It's stance independent. So it has nothing to do with your desires or your motivations for action. So this is an important characteristic, and typically morality is also understood as was what Kant would call a categorical imperative, where there is this authoritativeness to the claim. For example, if I make the claim that murder is wrong, okay, that's a categorical claim. It's not merely just that I don't like murder or I have this weird disposition against murder. No, morality is a much bigger claim. It's making this authoritative claim that basically it's not merely about our motivations, but rather it's about this higher order authoritativeness about it, right? So typically, one way to think about this is you have motivational normativity, which is if I am motivated to do something, then I will do it, and then that's what makes it good or bad. So, for example, if I claim that I like, let's say, chocolate chip ice cream or something like that, I don't know, whatever ice cream you like, you say it's a good ice cream, right? But that's just a preference. That's not actually describing anything that's authoritative. But when it comes to morality, that's an authoritative claim. Right? So there's this authoritative normativity to morality. Another thing about morality is that typically morality is understood as something that is desire independent, right? So it exists out there independent of our desires of whether we want to pursue it or not, and that you're obligated to follow it regardless of whatever your desires are. That's what I understand objective, like this moral realism, to mean. Um, And of course, that's just one perspective. But the thing about that is we can very easily derive the claim that God is not responsible for grounding that. And here's how. So let's say that God exists. Okay. Let's say that God knows about the moral truths. Is that going to motivate him to do it? What's the motivation for him to do it? Now, of course, someone might claim, well, God is good, right? It's in his, let's say that it's within his nature to do the good. Okay. Here's the problem with that. If God is going to do the good because he ought to do it because it's within his nature to do it, the issue is that there's something independent of his desires in this scenario that's making him do it. So there's something external, there's something independent of his desires that is making him do the good, right? So obviously the good in this context is not going to be grounded in him, but rather he has a nature by which he responds to the good. So that's kind of the first issue with the whole claim that morality is supposed to be grounded in God, which is like, well, what exactly is doing the grounding? Because traditionally morality is understood as this desire independent thing that's supposed to so motivations are largely irrelevant to the question. And of course this runs into problems, because if we're going to say that if God exists and he's motivated to do something, well, what is he motivated by? He's not going to be motivated by morality, right? Because again, we define morality as desire independent reasons to do action. And so either he's going to be desired to do something, which means he can't be desired. Otherwise, he can't be desired by the morality. Or we say, well, it's within his nature to do the morality because it's always a good action. But then if he has this nature to pursue the good, right? Well, then that means the good has to exist beyond him. It can't exist just within him. So that's the kind of main issue with at least the claim that morality is grounded in God, right? Because there's nothing within God's nature that actually gives you that. Now, here's one perspective. This is my view, okay? I actually do think, in some sense, that it's really hard to say whether morality is objective without the existence of God, or at least my conception of what I think God is. And here's the reason why is my moral views when it comes to morality is a teleological view. So similar to kind of the ancient understanding. Basically, on a teleological view of morality, morality is not defined by these categorical imperatives or not even necessarily this idea of authoritative normativity. Rather, it's going to be determined more like basically the good is something that's teleological, something that has a goal, or there's some end that you have to reach. And so what makes an action good is if it conforms to that teleological end, and then what makes an action bad is whatever goes against that teleological end. So that's my view. That's my view of how I think morality works. I don't think morality is this just this pure desire independent thing that exists out in the ether somewhere. No, I think morality, if it exists, is going to be teleological. So because I view morality as teleological, well, what does that mean for God? Well, on my perspective, if God exists, and if this teleological view of morality is true, then we could say, well, if God is good, he's going to have a teleological end, right? What does that mean? Well, it just means that for God, God is his own end. God is, in a sense, his own teleological end, right? So that explains, why God cannot be bad on this account, because God is his own end, then it's impossible for God in this kind of meta-ethical framework to do a bad action, right? Otherwise, he would just be going against his own nature, and that's just not possible for him to do, at least metaphysically speaking. And so, because of that, because God is, on my account, his own end, then everything else has to also, has their end in God as well. So basically, on my view, God is his own end, and then everything else that's not God ultimately is going to find their end in God. And so again, that's just my view. You don't have to agree with it. That's my teleological view of this. So in some sense, I do agree, at least partially, that God is the good, but it's not in the same way that most, especially neoclassical theists, will kind of wrap their heads around. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to outline kind of my views on this, and let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will get back to you more on my views of that. So anyways, have a nice day.